The story of Ilkaputiei is not the memory of a single clash of spears upon an open plain. It is the memory of a people caught in the violent hinge of history, when drought, disease, ambition, and empire converged upon the Maa world. In the 19th century, the lands stretching across the Ilkaputiei plains trembled beneath the hooves of cattle and the measured stride of Morans. The Ilkaputiei, a formidable territorial section of the Maasai, stood among the most feared and respected. Their kraals rose against the horizon like fortresses of thorn and will. Their wealth grazed upon the grasslands. Their identity was braided into the breath of cattle. Then came rupture. When the great Laibon Mbatian died, unity fractured into rivalry. His sons, Senteo and Lenana, became opposing poles in a gathering storm. Sections of the Maasai aligned themselves according to loyalty, prophecy, and ambition. The Ilkaputiei were drawn into this civil tempest, not merely as spectators, but as decisive actors. War among the Maasai was never mindless chaos. It was structured through age sets, sanctified by ritual, and ordained through divination. Spears were not lifted without consultation. Warriors were not unleashed without blessing. Yet once released, they moved like fire across dry savanna. Dawn raids split the silence. Cattle were driven off in thunderous waves. Dust rose, and with it, lamentation. But this was no ordinary season of conflict. Calamity walked beside warfare. Renderpest devoured the herds that sustained life. Smallpox etched death upon human flesh. Drought cracked the earth into an altar of thirst. This era, remembered in Maa memory as a time of disaster, reduced proud warriors to guardians of emptiness. A single successful raid meant survival. Failure meant starvation. Thus conflict intensified, sharpened not only by rivalry, but by desperation. The Ilkaputiei, occupying lands near the trade corridors that would later nourish a colonial capital, became strategically exposed. They raided and were raided. They defended pasture against neighboring communities such as the Kamba and the Kikuyu, even as they contended with rival Maasai sections. Their strength was unquestioned, but strength alone cannot outlast plague and political fracture. Then, as if summoned by the weakness of division, a new power entered the plains. The British administration established the British East Africa Protectorate, bringing with it rifles, administrative decree, and a different philosophy of dominion. Where the Morans' authority flowed from age-set valor and spiritual sanction, colonial authority flowed from the barrel of a gun and the geometry of surveyed land. Punitive expeditions followed resistance. Spears met bullets, valor met artillery. The outcome was not ambiguous. The Ilkaputiei were broken not in one glorious final battle, but through attrition, through displacement, disarmament, and the erosion of autonomy. Survivors moved southward toward Kajiado. The warrior order, once sovereign across vast plains, found itself subordinated to an alien administration. Yet to speak of their fall alone is to misunderstand their legacy. The Ilkaputiei embodied a worldview in which land was sacred trust, cattle were lifeblood, and warfare was both economic instrument and spiritual ordeal. Their story marks the twilight of an era when East African plains were governed not by drawn borders, but by mobility, kinship, and martial honor. They did not vanish. Their memory endures in oral narratives, in the cadence of warrior chants, in the resilience of Maasai identity. History may record the establishment of protectorates and railways, but memory records dust, blood, prophecy, and defiance. The Ilkaputiei battle, therefore, was not a moment. It was a season when a proud people stood between drought and empire, and learned that sometimes history defeats even the brave.